Over half a century ago, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, the crew of Apollo 11, left the Earth to make history. Landing human beings on another heavenly body for the first time was a defining moment for our species, showing the world exactly what we are capable of. Throughout the Apollo program, 12 brave astronauts set foot on the lunar surface, conducting experiments and retrieving rock samples to return back to Earth for analysis. These missions played a huge part in expanding our knowledge and understanding of our place in the solar system and helped develop new technologies that we use in our everyday lives. Sadly, since the crew of Apollo 17 left the lunar surface to return home in 1972, no human being has returned to the moon. The shifting economic and geopolitical landscape has hindered the viability of repeating such a feat over the past few decades. However, the tides have now turned. NASA's Artemis program promises to build upon the legacy of Apollo, returning humanity to the lunar surface, not to plant flags and leave footprints, but to build a sustainable, long-term human presence on the moon. Artemis will bring together NASA with the European, Japanese, and Canadian space agencies in a tremendous feat of collaboration. In this video, we will outline each step that will be taken on this journey, and how this may be just the beginning of a new age of exploration and expansion playing out right before our eyes. For this new generation of ambitious lunar missions, NASA required a brand new launch vehicle, capable of transporting crew and cargo to the moon safely, reliably, and efficiently. This is where the SLS, or Space Launch System, comes in. SLS is to Artemis what the Saturn V was to Apollo. This gigantic rocket utilizes a combination of refurbished shuttle-era hardware and cutting-edge technologies. It utilizes two shuttle-derived, 5-segment solid rocket boosters mounted on each side of the core stage, which itself features 4 flight-proven RS-25 engines, also from the shuttle era. With a maximum combined thrust of 8 million pounds, the SLS tops that of even the mighty Saturn V. The upper stage featured on the first set of Artemis launches is known as the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPS. This is effectively a stretched version of the second stage regularly flown on the Delta IV rocket. However, plans are already in place to upgrade various parts of the SLS, including the upper stage. The different proposed iterations of the SLS are known as Block 1, Block 1B, and Block 2. Each of these versions will have both crew and cargo variants. The first iteration, Block 1, has the lowest performance of the three, and will be used for the first 3 Artemis missions. SLS Block 1B does away with the interim cryogenic propulsion stage in favor of the new exploration upper stage, powered by 4 RL-10C3 engines. This provides a massive increase to the performance of SLS, allowing heavier payloads to be launched, which is essential for later Artemis missions. Block 1B is planned to be used first for Artemis 4, which involves not just transportation of crew, but also the first delivery of a space station module to the Lunar Gateway, but we'll get to that soon. As we look further into the future, SLS Block 2 will make its first appearance. The main upgrade seen on the Block 2 variant comes in the form of its side-mounted solid rocket boosters. These new generation SRBs, known currently as the Booster Obsolescence and Life Extension Program, or BOLE for short, feature state-of-the-art composite casings and a new propellant mixture. This will provide another hefty performance boost to the SLS, opening up possibilities for even larger payloads to the moon and even missions further into our solar system. With all that being said, you can't have crewed missions to the moon without a spacecraft to get them there. That's where Orion comes in. Officially called the Orion Multi-Purpose Crew Vehicle, this advanced space capsule is capable of supporting 6 astronauts beyond low Earth orbit. Designed by Lockheed Martin, Orion was actually one of the earliest pieces of hardware to be built, as it was originally planned to be used as part of the now-canceled Constellation program. Although it may have some similarities to the design of the Apollo crew module, Orion is significantly larger, not to mention the cutting-edge technology packed inside. However, the Orion spacecraft doesn't fly alone. Throughout the vast majority of its mission, it will be accompanied by the European Service Module, or ESM, which will serve as Orion's primary power and propulsion element until it is detached at the end of each mission. During the flight, this service module will provide the water and oxygen required for a livable environment. It also generates and stores electrical power while maintaining the temperature of the Orion systems. The ESM represents one of the European Space Agency's contributions to the Artemis program as one of NASA's major partners. But Orion is not capable of ferrying astronauts down to the lunar surface. That's not its purpose. That job is left to another vital component of the Artemis program, the Human Landing System, or HLS. Rather than leading the HLS development effort internally, NASA provided an initial concept and asked commercial vendors to compete to design, develop, and provide a landing system based on specific requirements. In 2021, SpaceX was awarded the contract with a lunar variant of their Starship vehicle, subject to a successful uncrewed test landing of their spacecraft. This huge lander will have to be launched upon SpaceX's Super Heavy first stage, then refueled multiple times in low Earth orbit before being placed into lunar orbit. The Orion capsule will dock with the HLS, allowing the transfer of crew into the lander before it descends to the surface. The sheer size of this spacecraft gives NASA the ability to transport significantly more equipment to the Moon than was possible on the historical Apollo landings. After around a week, the Starship lander will lift off and deliver its crew back to Orion, thus completing its mission. In May of 2023, a second lunar lander provider was selected by NASA to support the astronauts during Artemis missions later in the program. This time, the contract was awarded to the national team headed by Blue Origin. This more traditional-looking lander will offer competition to SpaceX and help to support more regular visits to the lunar surface. Like SpaceX, Blue Origin will conduct an uncrewed landing to prove the functionality and safety of their spacecraft. Another important part of the program, which we will see after the first few missions, is the Gateway. This is a new space station to be constructed in lunar orbit. Like the International Space Station, Gateway features a modular design and will be assembled over a period of time. Comprising initially of 4 modules, the Power and Propulsion Element, or PPE, the Habitation and Logistics Outpost, or HALO, the European System, providing refueling, infrastructure, and telecommunications, or ESPRI, and finally, the International Habitation Module, or IHAB. Gateway will be placed in a very eccentric lunar orbit, known as a near-rectilinear halo orbit, or NRHO. This unusual orbit was chosen, partially because it gives landers a very efficient path to the lunar South Pole. There is also expectation that the station will continue to grow, with more modules added over time. The purpose of the Gateway is to serve as a communication hub, science lab, and short-term habitation for astronauts. NASA also has longer-term ambitions to use Gateway as a stepping stone to Mars, using it as a refueling point for spacecraft destined for the Red Planet. November 16, 2022 saw the first official launch of the Artemis program, aptly named Artemis 1. This was an uncrewed test flight sending an Orion capsule and service module into lunar orbit on board the SLS rocket, before returning to the Earth, allowing for a full end-to-end test of the systems required to keep future astronauts safe, including the heat shield. This was a highly anticipated first launch of the Space Launch System, and was considered a resounding success. The 25-day mission achieved all main mission objectives, setting the stage for crew to head to the Moon next, for the first time in more than 50 years. Currently planned to take place in late 2024, Artemis 2 will carry 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen on a lunar flyby mission. The purpose of Artemis 2 is to rigorously test the life support systems on the Orion capsule and demonstrate rendezvous and proximity operations using the depleted ICPS as a target. This type of close-quarters maneuverability will be essential for future missions, which will involve operating near to and docking with the Gateway and the HLS lander. The end of 2025 is the current estimate for the launch of Artemis 3. This is the mission humanity has truly been waiting for since 1972, when astronauts will finally set foot on the surface of the Moon once again. The The final launch of SLS Block 1 will ferry crew to lunar orbit, where Orion will dock with the HLS Starship, and 2 brave astronauts will enter the lander. Starship will descend to the surface, leaving Orion and the remaining crew supporting the mission from lunar orbit. During the week the lander will be on the surface, the 2 crew members will conduct several spacewalks, collecting samples and conducting scientific tests and making observations. Something of particular interest to us will be the potential presence of water ice in significant quantities, which would help support future human settlements, providing a local source of drinking water and the ability to create rocket fuel in situ. The Starship will then carry the crew and their newly collected samples back up to Orion waiting in orbit, which will carry them back to the Earth. Up next, Artemis 4 is set to launch in 2028 and will be the debut launch of the SLS Block 1B. NASA plans to make good use of the extra performance of this new SLS variant by not only transporting Orion and the service module, but also the habitation module of Gateway. By this time, both the PPE and Halo modules should already have been launched to lunar orbit by commercial launch providers. Crew will then proceed with another landing, utilizing the HLS Starship vehicle once again. This will build upon the Artemis 3 mission, with another 2 crew members conducting further spacewalks and scientific research. As things stand, Artemis 5 is scheduled to launch in 2029. With a very similar mission plan to Artemis 4, this will see the Esprit module delivered to the Gateway, alongside a Canadian-built robotic arm system and NASA's new lunar terrain vehicle. This new state-of-the-art moon rover has been developed to allow astronauts to cover much greater distances away from the lander during spacewalks, allowing new regions to be surveyed and sampled. Artemis 5 will again see 2 crew members traveling down to the surface. However, this will not be using the HLS Starship. This is slated to be the first crewed mission to utilize the new lander, produced by Blue Origin and the national team. Looking beyond Artemis 5, exact mission profiles and details are yet to be outlined, but we may assume that the future of Artemis will be based around expanding the capabilities of the Gateway and moving towards developing a permanent human presence on the moon's surface. From the very beginning, NASA have made it clear that they intend for Artemis to be a stepping stone to Mars. The technology developed and the experience gained pursuing our lunar endeavors will stand us in good stead for pushing further into our solar system. Thank you for watching TurboMind. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on our upcoming videos.